Hey guys, so this is our second video going through how to construct a comparative response in the form of an essay for your next upcoming SAC. We've looked at introductions, we are now going to look at writing our body paragraphs. So by now you should have written your introduction. You had that instruction from our last lesson. Hopefully this gives you an indication of the importance of structure. We're going to continue looking at structure now for your body paragraphs. Now, in your body paragraphs, I said it last lesson, it is crucial that you discuss key similarities and differences between the two texts. The similarities and differences you discuss will be in relation to an idea, issue, or theme that is indicated by the essay topic, and of course by your response to the essay topic. The arguments that you provided in your introduction are going to give you the inspiration for your paragraph topic sentences. And I'll go through what this means in a few slides. So with your body paragraphs, you need to consider how the text conveys a point of view on the ideas presented in the essay topic. You need to think about characters. You need to think about narrative, situations, events. In the case of the two texts that we are studying, Night and Diary of a Young Girl, it is also critical that you consider authorship. What is it that the author is trying to convey? You need to think about this how question when you're planning your response. It'll lead to deeper understanding of the texts as well as revealing interesting similarities and differences for you to discuss. Personally, I find it almost impossible to consider the how question without discussing a text with another person who has read it. So if you're going forward today to write your body paragraphs, consider contacting one of your classmates and having a chat to them about how they want to respond to the essay prompt. You've got the same essay prompt that you're working on, so having that discussion could really highlight for you some of those key similarities and differences, perhaps ones you've never thought about before. So let's have a look at structure. This is not new information. We're following the Peel structure that you've done for years, so you should have a general idea about how this works at this point. First off is your paragraph point, or you might know it as the topic sentence. You need to outline the argument that you're going to make in this paragraph. It's one sentence long, it should not be longer than that. Next is your explanation. Now we're going to start with the explanation of one of the texts, so text A. You need to explain how text A, and that can be whichever one you choose, illustrates that the argument you are making is correct. You then of course need to provide evidence to support your explanation. This will then work to prove that your argument is correct. Now we know that evidence is of course quotes from the book. Next, you will provide an explanation on how text B, so your next text, your second text, illustrates that the argument you are making is correct and or how it is similar or different to text A. So that is a difference in the explanation that you would have provided at the very beginning of your paragraph for text A. You must identify those key similarities or differences. Then, of course, you need to provide evidence from text B to prove that your argument is correct. So evidence supporting your explanation. And lastly, you have your link. You need to explain to the reader how your analysis of the two texts ultimately supports your response to the essay topic or your overall contention. This is, of course, very important to have that link at the end to remind the reader of your essay what it is that you're actually writing about as a whole. What is your essay all about? So let's move on to paragraph point. Your topic sentence or paragraph point has actually already been written in your introduction. If you followed the correct structure that was outlined in our last lesson, then you would have provided your three arguments in your introduction or a summary of those three arguments. The first one that you provided should be the topic sentence for your first paragraph. Now let's revisit the slides from last week and I'll show you those arguments that I came up with for the example prompt that I'll be writing on. So this was the slide from last week. I've got argument 1, argument 2, argument 3, and this is what I included in my introduction. Now I'm going to work with argument 1 for this body paragraph as an example to show you how to write. Okay, so for my paragraph point, I'm simply going to rephrase my first argument that I had in my introduction in order to form my paragraph point for my first paragraph. So the argument was people are unable to take into consideration that which they have not experienced. Therefore, it is impossible to know that people are really good at heart. Now I need to rewrite that. I've decided to rewrite that like this. It is impossible for people to make overarching comments about humanity if they are sheltered from the knowledge of what humanity has done. Now, I've also got just in the green box above, that's my overall contention. So that's just to remind me what it is that I'm actually talking about or what it is that I'm making this argument to support. So let's move on to our explanation. Now I've chosen Diary of a Young Girl as my first text. Your explanation needs to clearly explain how Diary of a Young Girl, in my instance, shows us that your argument is correct. You do not want to spend too many sentences on this. I would recommend 2 to 3. Although Anne Frank details her fear of the unknown, she cannot fathom the reality of what other Jews are experiencing, as it is so far removed from her own situation. Her limited experiences of humanity are that people are not all bad, and she therefore is able to come to the conclusion that people are fundamentally good at heart. Now you can see that I've not used quotes in the explanation, but that's not to say that you can't. If there is a particular quote, maybe a very short quote, a description that Anne uses, or a description of her setting that would really work with your explanation, please feel free to put it in there. That's absolutely fine. Of course, I now need evidence to prove that what I'm saying in my explanation is not just crap. It's actually something that is proved by what's written in the book. So your evidence is in the form of quotes. I would expect 1 to 2 quotes per book, per paragraph. So you should have at least 2 to 4 quotes in each paragraph of your comparative response essay. You must always provide context for the quotes you present in your essay. So these are the quotes that I've decided to use to prove my explanation is true. Anne and her family are protected by the graces of, quote, good noble people. Anne writes that, quote, Miep and Mr. Kluger bear the greatest burden, Miep in everything she does, and Mr. Kluger through his enormous responsibility for the aid of us. Mr. Kleiman and Bep also take very good care of us. Her only interactions with people outside of her family are positive. Now, I've highlighted in yellow my context. With this particular quote, I haven't had to necessarily give really detailed context of like, oh, this happened in 1942 or on March 27th in 1943. I don't have to do that in this instance because it's not necessary for what I'm trying to say. However, there may be instances where that is the case. Let's say, for instance, you were making a comment about Anne and Peter's relationship. You would need to make sure that you provided context on what you are describing and when it happened in the timeline of their relationship. Again, it only has to be short, just a really brief description to introduce your quote that you've chosen or to explain your quote a little bit afterwards, whatever makes sense in your writing. So my explanation for text B, not only do I have to explain what I'm going to say about text B, but I also need to identify a key similarity or difference to text A. So this is what I've decided to write. In complete contrast, Elie Wiesel's experience in Night leads him to be exposed to the darkest side of human nature. His experience in the concentration camps makes it impossible for him to forget the cruelty that people perpetuate, as he is no longer ignorant to its existence. He cannot share Anne's positive outlook on humanity. So again, I have not used quotes. It's not to say that you can't, but I didn't think that it was necessary in my explanation. So what I've done is I've made it very clear that I'm contrasting text B with text A. I'm not comparing, I'm not finding similarities, I'm finding differences. My last sentence here definitely, so that directly links to my description of text A, where I'm talking about the difference between Ellie and between Anne. So this is my evidence from text B. Again, 1 to 2 quotes per book per paragraph. So I'm going to have 2 quotes here taken from text B. So Ellie and his father witnessed depravity not only from the German guards, but from the other prisoners as well. When Ellie's father asked where the bathroom was on their second day in Auschwitz, the gypsy in charge responded by, quote, staring at him for a long time, as if he wished to ascertain that the person addressing him was actually a creature of flesh and bone. Then he slapped with such force that he fell down and then crawled back to his place on all fours. As the Jews were being evacuated from Buna, Ellie realized that he and his fellow prisoners had become like, quote, clowns, more dead than alive, poor creatures whose ghostly faces peeked out from layers of prisoners' clothes, poor clowns. Ellie could not believe the best of people because this situation demanded survival be placed before generosity. So I've highlighted there some of the context for my quotes and some of the explanations, so brief explanations of why I've included these quotes in my paragraph. And then, of course, I've got my link. So in my link, I'm going to explain to the reader how my analysis of the 2 texts ultimately supports my overall contention, my response to the essay topic. So I need to remind the person reading my essay what it is I'm actually trying to say. Why have I brought up all of these things from the book? Why have I pulled out these quotes? So remember, my contention was, it is our experiences that define our perception of humanity, our ability to hope, and our ability to have faith. It is impossible for someone to appreciate all the good and all of the evil that people are capable of. So this is how I've decided to form my link. In night, Ellie was unable to see the good in people as his exposure to cruelty eclipsed any gestures of kindness he received. In contrast, Anne could only focus on the good in others as she was ignorant to the conditions Jews were subjected to after they were captured. Both protagonists made different conclusions about humanity due to their limited experiences. So this is my linking. These are my linking sentences that remind the reader of my essay what it is I'm actually trying to prove. So let's put all of this together. Have a little look. Now, I'm going to get you guys to pause the video here and read it yourselves, just so that I don't have to read it all out loud for you. But after you've done that, come back to the video and we can talk about how I can actually make this better, because I've been reading all of this through. All I've done is gone and copy and pasted each of the sections that I've done according to the structure. So certainly I can refine this. It's definitely not in its final form. So what are some of the decisions I've made to make it better? A couple of things I decided to do was take away words that I didn't think were necessary. I've also clarified some of the vocabulary that I've used. So in some instances in my paragraph previously, I was making assertions about the characters that were really black and white. So I was saying things, as you can see, highlighted in green, after the quote about Anne, and Mr. Kleiman and Bep also take very good care of us, just in the top half of the paragraph. It says the majority of her interactions. Previously, in my last slide, that was actually her only interactions. So I want to clarify that, because it wasn't just that she had only good interactions with people in her life or during her time in the annex. There were some experiences that she had or interactions she had that were not good. But I think that the majority of her interactions with people outside of her family are positive. And because of that, it makes it impossible for her to consider that actually people are not good at heart. So she comes to a very different conclusion that Ellie does. So I hope that this video has been helpful for you. I actually do have some more information on vocabulary. I'm going to very quickly show you this, but I recommend that you have a look at the slides that I've provided for you as a PDF document in our lesson, so that you can see this information and you can have it on hand to look back on. So vocabulary is really important. When I was talking to you at the beginning of this video about the how question, how does an author convey meaning in their text? These are some sentence starters that you could possibly use. Of course, these are quite specific ones. You would need to make sure that you're developing them for the ideas that you're presenting in your essay. So have a little read of these sentences when you can. And next, I've got some vocabulary for similarities. It's really important that you know how to communicate when you are talking about similarities and when you are talking about differences. This is what refines your sentences. This is what makes them better. You don't want to always be using the same words or the same connecting words or starting words for your sentences each time, because then you start to sound really repetitive. So here are some vocabulary for similarities. And I've also got some vocabulary for differences as well. So please go through these slides at your own pace. Please go through the video a second time so that you understand all of the information on structure that I've conveyed to you today. If you have any questions at all, please make sure that you email me so that I can help you to understand the content of the video. Good luck, and I'm looking forward to seeing your body paragraphs.